So, this is a little bit of a deep cut, I suppose, but Hellier is a show that I have nothing but a very profound respect for, honestly. It's actually a great show, really, because it's something very unique and clever. It's very interesting. It's not a work of fiction, which is what I normally review and talk about and discuss on this channel, but it it is it's actually a docu-series, but it is nevertheless something of an essay in storytelling, um, with highs and lows all of its own. Because Hellier is weird. Um, Greg and Dana Newkirk are weird, in and I mean that as a compliment. I like people who are weird, but they are basically professional collectors of haunted objects and purveyors uh, of the strange and unnatural. They are clever in and in a very interesting way. And while I cannot say I personally know them, nor can I attest for their total honesty, to this day I'm not even sure if Hellier is or was actually intended to be a performance, perhaps a sort of play, if you will, only presented as the truth, or if it is meant to be taken as an actual, well and true, genuine documentary. But I'm not sure it entirely matters because it is a very captivating story, nevertheless, very bizarre, and I think anyone who's a fan of the works of David Lynch, say, will be enthralled by Hellier. The story goes that Greg and Dana Newkirk were they were contacted, I suppose. I think it was an email, maybe. Ori- Originally, they were contacted by this doctor who said that his family were being pestered in the town of Hellier in Kentucky. And actually, they were more than pestered. They were basically besieged by um, creatures, cryptids, I suppose. They were tracking these goblinoid beings, like kind of weird monkey creatures that were hanging around their house. It's a very similar case to that which beset the Hopkinsville goblins incident. Although I don't believe there was any. I don't believe in the Hellier incident there was anything outright obviously supernatural necessarily. Because in the Hopkinsville case there were like floating creatures and lights in the sky and stuff. But I digress. Um, I mean, goodness, it's one heck of a story, and it continually gets weirder. Um, the Doctor does not seem to exist, right? Like when Greg and Dana and their team get to the town of Hellier to investigate, no one knows who the Doctor is. They've never heard of him. They don't know where he could have lived, or it's crazy. But there is evidence of weird stuff, like cryptid-like stuff, going on in the town of Hellier, the actual town of Hellier. And things get even more weird and bizarre from there. I mean, they begin to get emails during their investigation from a man with a pen name Terry Wrist, which is a funny username, right? I mean, because obviously that's terrorist, but yeah. Um, and he keeps hinting at this very larger, more bizarre and complicated, like magical process at work. And honestly, a great deal of Hellier has inspired my own writing, particularly Darkest in the Light, my own occult thriller, because that's that's the kind of story that's being told here. This sort of occult ritual and conspiracy taking place in the, as told through the format of this crazy, bizarro adventure, right? And Hellier does feel like a story that's being told. And I think that's just their clever way of presenting an actual weird series of events that happened. That said, I still have a hard time believing that this actually happened, that these things. I mean, we never see a goblin, and nothing supernatural ever occurs in the show. So it's obviously presented as a documentary. And that's all I can say really is that there seems to be a lot of evidence that these things did happen as they are presented, or at least something to that effect. And they actually bring in some very interesting, credible people to talk to. And they talk about all sorts of crazy stuff from veritable scholars of high strangeness who discussing cryptids and the supernatural to the frankly the trickster god that is Alan Greenfield, who's just a fun character in his own right, and you wouldn't believe he's actually a real human being, but he is, and he's a fun guy to talk to. Let me tell you, it's through him that we gain access to the really fun parts of the show with where they're doing research into Crowley and witchcraft and these weird anomalies and silver party balloons. Um, and they get into some deep stuff. The Mothman, yes, and more than the Mothman, the much more interesting and much more appalling story of Indrid Cold, who they begin to investigate in relation to the local goblins and other things. It's wild and interesting. And Indrid Cold is this supposedly this alien creature come from another world and who had like telepathic powers and who discussed the supernatural and the otherworldly. And it's a very curious case. Indrid Cold apparently has now is now dead, assuming that he's ever existed at all, which I doubt, but that's a totally different story. Apparently, they called him the Grinning Man, which is so creepy. But apparently, he wasn't villainous. At least the people who allegedly encountered him claimed that he wasn't villainous. Greg and Dana obviously never encountered Indrid Cold in person. Um, but yeah, that's the kind of stuff they deal with in Hellier regularly. But I should warn you that starting out, Hellier is a little slow, and that's because it is a real world investigation. And when they do get some real evidence, it gets much more interesting, much more fascinating. Um, they have some amazing interviews, and it's brilliant, really, the kind of stuff they talk about, and it makes you think about spirituality and just what you know about the world itself in a very interesting way, even if you don't necessarily believe any of that stuff. I think it's worthwhile watching because it is an essay in storytelling, and it's a they're telling a real story, right? And it's very fascinating. It's that's yeah, that's why I like Hellier. It's very moving in that way and very engaging. Um, and that is Hellier. I could not explain it better, really. I wish that I could, but I can't because it's terrific and bonkers in all the right ways. Take it from me, a fantasy and horror author with a YouTube channel and an opinion. Um, I like Hellier. You don't have to take it from me if you don't want, though. No big whoop or anything. But yeah, so bye.